Okay, back. I would argue those.
All right, we're here in the studio today with Sarah Emilar and John Riddle, authors of Where to Bike Los Angeles, your spiral-bound guide to 81 rides, 50 adults, 31 kids rides here across the greater Los Angeles area. That is greater as in from Azusa to Long Beach and, my gosh, Santa Monica Mountains to Palos Verdes. Really incredible scope you guys have put together for this book. And as Chicken Leather was pointing out, this book it's a part of a larger series, many guides in the same format, but it's a wonderful guide to have along. I just want to talk a little bit about the book itself. It's spiral bound, but it's got a wide, generous spiral binding, so the pages don't bind up together. It's easy to flip through. It's got a heavy duty cover with a cover flap that helps you close the book, but keep your place in the book. It just folds into the book, so you can always keep your place. The front cover is this gatefold map with all the rides, so you can have this quick access. And then every individual ride has a really nice kind of narrative write-up, a little at a glance, how to get to the ride, what other rides are nearby, so it links to proximate rides, and then it gives an idea of the scale of difficulty, classifies the ride, is it park, urban, or rural, and they talk about the facilities that you'll find on that ride. Is it just an on-street ride, or is it a bike lane, or is it a bike route or path? So all these things make it a really handy, usable guide. Now, Sarah, you were saying that there are several other books here in the same series coming out for the LA area. Tell us about those.
That's right. Well, I was starting to say that we're one of the first books that was done for U.S. City by this Australian publisher, Where to Bicycling Australia, and they picked L.A., San Francisco, Washington, Chicago, Philadelphia, and New York. And what they discovered was that Southern California around LA is one of the most interesting areas for evolving bicycling. So they really zoomed in on this, and now there are going to be 3 other companion books just for Southern California. One that has already been issued, at least to the author, not officially released, is Orange County road biking. And then there's going to be Orange County mountain biking, and also one that's coming out very soon is Los Angeles mountain biking. Ours is really a road biking book.
Mm-hmm. It really is. And the Orange County angle is really interesting to me because Orange County is like, the kingdom of the car, even more than the LA region, which is so, has so much variety, the topography and everything else, different kinds of communities. Orange County, in the popular imagination, is a kind of a homogeneous, car-oriented, suburban sprawl place. Now, having been there and looked around a little bit, I know that there are exceptions to the rule, and Anaheim doesn't feel like other parts of say, southern Orange County. So there's plenty to explore there, and yet I know from a bike blogger, Ted Rogers, who really looks at the safety aspects of cycling, the safety scene. He's constantly highlighting these fatalities and these hit and runs. Crazy.
We're
this is Kill
hearing
Radio.
a siren and honking out the window. What did you plan that, Mark?
No, but I can tell you it happens like clockwork when you're in the Kill Radio studio. We're in Kill Radio studios at Vermont and Beverly, and this is ground zero for urban noise right here. And obviously we don't have a soundproof booth, but we're working on it. So anyway, Orange County, it's this kind of auto-dominated place. So the idea that we've got a biking guide coming out for Orange County is great, and then the idea that the publisher BA Press is putting out mountain biking guides as well is terrific.
Yeah, I'm first of all a roadie, but I happen to have a mountain bike, and I've taken this bike on a lot of my travels overseas, and I'm pleased that they're coming out with a mountain biking book, because it's like it's now my mandate to learn all those rides and to put this mountain bike to work. So I'm excited. I'm going to be one of the first buyers of this book.
I think we might get it for free, actually. But it is there's going to be some previously uncharted territory, so that's exciting.
Well, to me, I'm a road rider also. I'm never really mountain bike, so to me, a lot of it's uncharted territory. Orange County itself, for me, is uncharted territory as a road rider, and the mountains totally uncharted, except for those canyon roads. I know some of those. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I really look forward to it. But I really love also your, John, especially your enthusiasm. I mean, here you've authored this kind of encyclopedic road guide for Southern California rides, and you're looking forward to a mountain biking cycling guide with the same enthusiasm that someone picks up your book with. Wow, let me see. Let me dig into this.
Sure. Well, it's all bicycling,
mm-hmm.
and it's whether it's on streets of Los Angeles or on a beach bike path, or doing some single track up in the San Gabriel or Santa Monica Mountains. It's all bicycling. It's all good. It's all fun. It's it involves some challenges. Mountain biking's not my first skill set, but it's a bicycle. It can't be that difficult, right? I can learn. Mm-hmm. So it's a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Am I a sissy for saying I'm too scared to mountain bike?
No, I think you're just you haven't you're a mountain biker ready to be hatched, to come out of your little shell.
You might be right. I'm so much more comfortable, riding down Alvarado, approaching, 6th and Wilshire area, which can be harrowing, if you're not an experienced cyclist. I'm so much more comfortable with that than heading downhill on a trail, which to me is like another range of experience I don't have.
But we talked earlier about favorite rides, and one of my I'm not sure if it's one of my favorite rides, but it's a ride I do all the time, and it's a ride I increasingly enjoy. And that is when they built phase 1 of the Expo Metro line, they also put a bike lane along almost all of Exposition from Culver City to USC. And I ride that at least once a week, maybe twice a week, because it's now my freeway to downtown Los
mm-hmm.
Angeles. And no kidding, I can get to downtown, like the Bike Coalition headquarters, faster on my bicycle going that route and obeying all of the traffic laws than I can if I were to drive.
Interesting. Yeah. Kind of the Expo line kind of paving the way, because there are these long stretches where the Expo line has actually created a kind of a thoroughfare for the cyclist.
Well, Venice Boulevard has a bike lane, roughly that entire distance, but I don't like Venice because the pavement's really
tough.
It's third world road pavement.
Really
let's face it.
Yeah.
It's which is really unfortunate, because if Venice were repaved, it'd be an entirely different cycling experience. It's just really tough.
For sure.
And the Expo line, when they put in the train, they repaved most of it, and it's a lot more comfortable, and it's fewer stops. You just motor ride along.
For sure.
On a bicycle.
For sure. Well, in a second, let's talk about our favorite local rides, not necessarily rides in the book, although you can talk about those, but also just the shorthand rides that we take. When I go to downtown, if I go to LACBC headquarters, for example, I could take that route. I live in Beverly Hills, I could drop through Culver City and then, pick up National and Exposition, take it out that way. At the opening line, at the Expo line's opening, I rode that whole stretch, and I really wasn't happy with the way they executed the bike lane there. And for my money, that's not one of the most interesting parts of town anyway. I went to USC for planning school, so maybe I've just taken that route too much anyway by car. My preferred route, if I'm going to from Beverly Hills to LACBC, is I'll usually hop up to Santa Monica Boulevard, which is no one's idea of a dream ride for sure. Take that through West Hollywood and through Hollywood, because the sense of history there for me is so interesting. I really feel it. I also know that when I'm on Santa Monica Boulevard, I'm on the old Pacific Electric streetcar line, and as I ride by some of the corners there, I can see where the original streetcar line actually cut on a diagonal up to Hollywood Boulevard. There was a Hollywood Boulevard, kind of a spur. Thank you, not a siding, a spur, exactly. And you can see where the legacy today is. This kind of diagonal cut through creates this alley, and LA doesn't have any diagonal alleys except where the old streetcars went. So I love this route.
I'd also point out that Santa Monica Boulevard's Route 66.
It is
It's
Route
the mother
66.
road in
Yeah,
a
yeah.
sense. You know, it's
I'm glad
and
you
that's,
mentioned it.
That's a whole other piece of our history.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we spoke with Melissa Thompson yesterday about mapping those adventure cycling routes, but adventure cycling is also the force behind U.S. Bike Route 66 and the larger bike route system. As I'm trying to make change in Beverly Hills, I often hang my hat. I love going to city council meetings and planning commission meetings. I've gone to so many in Beverly Hills. Love it, because I'm kind of a policy guy, by nature. So I go there, and one of the pegs that I hang my hat on is, hey, we're right on Route 66, historic Route 66, and moreover, there's an organization working to make this bike Route 66. How can we not have bike lanes in Beverly Hills on that route?
Well, we have to. I think if we leaf through the pages of history even further back, the League of American Cyclists were really at the forefront of developing our national highway system in the late 19th century, early 20th century, because there were millions of bicyclists then. Only a few hundred automobile drivers, a few thousand automobile drivers. And the league realized that all of these people on these high-wheelers wanted places to ride. And so they went to the national forefront in leading the cause of developing a national highway system, but first for bicyclists. They didn't even think about cars. They don't care about cars. They cared about bicyclists. So the national highway system we have 100 years later was really the brainchild of bicyclists. And so whenever we think about these roads that cars are on, they really owe bicyclists a lot.
More than they realize.
Yeah.
Actually, we have something that refers to an extremely early piece of bicycle infrastructure in the book, which is the California Cycleway.
Oh, you do?
Yes,
We do.
absolutely. Yeah.
John actually can talk about that.
Yeah, tell us about that.
So about 1900, 1904, there was this character up in Pasadena, wealthy guy, former mayor, or maybe he went on to become mayor. What he recognized was that there was Pasadena was increasingly a tourist haven. Okay, downtown Los Angeles was downtown Los Angeles, where a lot of people lived then, but there was no convenient connection. He also saw thousands upon thousands upon thousands of bicyclists.
I think it was one of the first bicycle booms nationally.
It probably was our first bicycle craze. And so he had this idea of building a cycleway connecting the population center, Los Angeles downtown, to Pasadena, tourist destination. Okay? And would connect it by this elevated wood bicycle way. So 12 or 14 miles worth of bicycling. You'd pay a nickel for the day, and you could bicycle from LA to Pasadena, or Pasadena to LA. His grand idea was that you would bicycle uphill in the morning, okay, because it is uphill from LA to Pasadena, and you'd party and fiesta.
In incline, yes.
The incline,
Right,
exactly.
on a mountain.
And so you'd go up there and you'd have your lunch and cocktails and whatnot. Then when you got ready to go home, it kind of be a downhill run to Los Angeles.
A coast.
A kind of a coast. My guess is you probably would have had to pedal a little bit, but on your high wheeler, just whiz on down home and get on the trolley line and go home. So a grand idea, unfortunately, in that era,
Ahead of its time, perhaps.
probably.
And also, it was sort of interrupted by the importance of the automobile.
Yeah, and I think there was some other funny business going on, because early on it was involved with a lawsuit with the guys that ran the trolley line, the red cars, and so I think that there was probably some backstabbing or whatnot, but unfortunately we don't have it. But
What did they build, like 2 miles, John?
2 or 3 miles of it. But what we've done in our book is we've said, okay, well, we don't have California Cycleway anymore, but what we can do is we can put together something that's pretty darn close. So you start at Union Station, which is where the California Cycleway would have started, and we work our way through Lincoln Heights and then on to the Arroyo Seco for a couple miles into South Pasadena, and then we get off and follow Arroyo Parkway into Green Avenue, Green Street in downtown Pasadena, where it would have ended. So,
And, I was going to say, that's one of the rare moments in the book where we were able to get historic photos. So we do have a photo of the Wood California Cycleway, which was courtesy of the Pasadena Historic
Museum.
Historic Museum, thank you. And another thing that we got from them, which I found very cool, was we had some rides that are around the Rose Bowl area, and we have this float, a Rose Bowl float that is bicycle powered. It's got 4 guys dressed up in 3-corner hats, and that is a 19th century photo. And they're definitely bicycle powered.
Wow. And
Yeah.
I want to mention just the photos for a second. As I was looking through the book, I'm thinking, of course, well, they picked up a bunch of stock photos because these photos are great photos. They're beautiful photos. And
Thanks.
a couple of them,
Thanks.
like, there's a nice photo of John in front of the Beverly Hills Hotel. So obviously that's not a stock photo, but so many of the other ones are just wonderful. But you took all these.
Oh, and we took something on the order of 4,000 photographs for this book. Many of them we think are better, but for various editorial reasons
Right,
didn't
they
make the
chose.
cut.
But I will say that we are going to create a blog, so I think we'll have to give more information about that later. But some of the outtakes will be there, and also so much is constantly evolving here. Even since the book came out, I think part of the Orange Line route has been extended. Is that right, John?
Well, we could go through. It would take a long time to go through all of the improvements in the bicycling climate here that's taken place in the few months since this book has come out. The 2 bike lanes in downtown Los Angeles, the Expo line, extending the Orange Line. I mean, the list just goes on. It's been so much has happened in the last year and a half.
So the blog and electronic components will continually update all that.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier, the app that goes with Where to Bike Los Angeles, which puts in your hand in the smartphone, allows you to map your location with the GIS function, with the GPS function right there.
Exactly.
Put you in the ride.
Yeah, and a couple things about the book to just if we don't want people to get the idea that this is like an 8.5 by 11 thing. It's actually rather small, probably 5.5 by 6.5 inches. Fits nicely in a backpack, and there's shortly going to be an ebook be available on iTunes, so you could have the entire book on smartphone, on
Mobile device.
a mobile device, iPad, something like that. So that's shortly.
Terrific.
Yep.
Wow. All right, so tell us a little bit about, so we've got all these rides. We've got 50 adult rides?
51.
51 and 30 kids.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got all these adult rides. What ride do you take when you go from your place in Culver City, and let's say I'm going to route you Culver City to Studio City, right? That's not a direct route. That takes you through a bunch of different neighborhoods. How are you going to get to Studio City? What's the route you're going to take?
That's actually a pretty easy one, I think. From our house in Culver City, we have a ride that goes from the Expo line station in Culver City to Beverly Hills. It actually goes to UCLA, but about halfway on that, we would then transition to one of our other rides that is Mulholland Drive. And so you'd have to actually ride that backwards a bit to Sepulveda.
Not really. We never go against traffic. We don't mean backwards in
We
that
mean
sense.
backwards in the sense of the way we choreographed it in the book. So you'd go Santa Monica Boulevard west to Sepulveda, and continue up Sepulveda to the Skirball Center, and then you'd need a short 4 miles more or less to continue on Sepulveda to the Orange Line, okay, which runs along basically where is it at that point? Just about the Sepulveda Basin. You'd get on the Orange Line, and you'd ride the Orange Line bikeway all the way to North Hollywood, And then in North Hollywood, you would get on our, what's the name of that ride that goes from there to, the Chandler. Get on the Chandler Bikeway
Right.
to Burbank, and then you just need to turn right on one of those streets there that would take you to Studio City. So if I've got it right, it's about a 25-mile ride, more or less, and about 4 or 5 of that would be on streets that would not be in our book, but the rest of it would be in our book. So we've taken half a dozen of our rides, tied them together, go from Culver City to Studio City.
Well, yeah, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. That brings something to mind, which was sort of a discovery for me. We talked to a lot of people who ride the city, and they gave us their secrets, and or I hope they shared some of them with us. And one of the things that was a side ride to that Orange Line ride that John just mentioned is the Great Wall of Los Angeles, which is in another storm drainage channel, and it's
Tahunga Wash.
Tahunga Wash, and it is this fantastic mural that was originally done, done in the 1970s and recently restored?
Yeah, it's at LA Valley College. It's at Valley,
and
LA
it's
Valley
totally
College.
worth seeing.
It's Judy Baca's work?
Exactly.
Is that it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a fabulous mural, fabulous artwork.
Now, the way John put that Studio City ride together shows just kind of this encyclopedic, this like super cartographic knowledge of the area that you got through putting together this book. But to me, that's insane. With all due respect, I would never take that route for myself, and I'll tell you why. Because I'm leaving late. I've got 45 minutes to ride from my house to Studio City. There's no way I'm heading up to the, Chandler Bikeway or any of that stuff. I'm looking for the crow flies. How would you go crow fly your house to Studio City?
Crow fly my house to Studio City. I'd probably go.
Putting you on the spot a little bit.
No. Actually, I'd probably go Castle Heights, which is through Beverlyville and the south end of Beverly Hills, and I'd go up Benedict Canyon.
Is that like Beverly Glen?
No, I'd stay off
No,
Beverly Glen. I don't like Beverly Glen.
That's east, right?
Yeah, I'd go.
That's a little too dangerous, we
Yeah,
think.
so I'd go Benedict Canyon, which is west of east of Beverly Glen.
Yeah,
East of Beverly
Yeah,
Glen.
between Beverly Glen and Coldwater.
And probably go east on Mulholland Drive for 2 or 3 streets, and then go down something like maybe Coldwater Canyon. Coldwater Canyon's pretty wide on the north side, and so I'd probably feel comfortable going down that.
Yeah.
And then that gets me basically into Studio City. It's, that's the crow flies. And I'd have no problem doing that. I mean, that's Benedict Canyon is not particularly trafficked, not like Coldwater or some of the ones further east.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Benedict Canyon is a pretty nice climb when you're heading north up into the hills,
Yeah.
and it isn't that trafficked. They redid it some years ago, and I think that really took some of the traffic edge off it.
Yeah.
Repaved it. That's one of my favorite rides, up and over.
Yeah.
What about for folks who aren't comfortable with the up and over? Because that's a steady climb. I mean, it takes either low gearing or it takes nice quads or whatever.
Well, is what's his name? William Mulholland, our famous / infamous
Heard of him.
Patron saint.
from 100 years ago or whatever. I think he noticed early on the essential challenge that we have in Los Angeles is that we have the southern part of Los Angeles and the northern part, and unfortunately the Santa Monica Mountains are right in the middle. And to get over those, you either need low gears and big quads, or you need to go way east to get around them, because there's really no to get to the San Fernando Valley. You got to it's a frontal attack of those Santa Monica Mountains. So unfortunately, to get from our house on the west side, Beverly Hills or Culver City, to Studio City, it's attack it head on or take Metro.
I mean, there's no bike tunnel yet.
Yeah.
And I think it's called Beverly Hills for a reason.
That's true. Well, you mentioned one of the easier up and overs is Sepulveda. If you can go a little bit to the west, you can up and over Sepulveda, and that's there's a reason why there's a freeway there, just like the 110, the Hollywood freeway goes through the Cahuenga Pass, because that's the lowest, that's the most easily traversed route. Like the Native Americans found that, and then we just built on that.
Exactly.
So Sepulveda is one of the easiest, and there are changes coming to Sepulveda. They're doing a lot of Caltrans is doing a lot of work, and I hear now and again talk about would there be some sort of metro link from the west side up to the busway up in the valley. I mean, so it's possible that when we look ahead 15 years or so, cyclists might have a much easier up and over.
Yeah, but that'd take all the fun out of it.
Oh, that would take
No,
and some of the sweat.
I'm serious. I would like to see some kind of bike infrastructure that took advantage of Sepulveda Pass. It's still a climb, and so I don't honestly. I'm not an engineer, a planner. I don't quite know how to deal with that essential geographic challenge, but. Aside from that, I would like to see him stripe that up bike lane all the way over to the orange line. It needs to go all the way to the orange line to make it a valuable part of our interconnected bike system here.
For sure. And you mentioned the geographic challenge. Well, that's not going away except for Sarah's tunnel, and we'll hope for that. But there's also that safety challenge, and Sepulveda's always been a problem, and with this new with the Sepulveda, with the 405 expansion, which is kind of a joint Caltrans Metro project, I remember as much as 2 years ago going to the Caltrans, the BAC7 meetings, happens about once a month, where Caltrans, it's a meeting for bicyclists and Caltrans folks. And I remember 2 years ago, Stephen Box and Alex Thompson, some of our other kind of leading advocates here, we're really leaning on Caltrans. Like, this is $1 billion project through this pass, and you guys have totally forgotten cyclists. The one meeting that's kind of came to a little bit of a rancorous head when Caltrans was proposing to put signs down that you should walk your bike through this construction area, and they were saying, hey, you're not telling motorists to push their cars through the construction area, and so that, for me, that kind of put this kind of issue on the agenda, that when we look at a project like the 405 widening or some of the other big ticket metro projects, or even some of the major boulevards, we have the Crosstown, Wilshire, and Olympic, we have to start building in these bicycle components, so that even if we can't eliminate that geographic challenge, we could at least start to ameliorate the safety challenge.
Yeah, I have this dream that someday in the future, when gasoline is $40 per gallon or whatever, and it's inevitably going to be much higher than it is now. It's just an economic reality that we're going to have these thousands and thousands and thousands of drivers that are giving up their automobiles and taking to bicycles, and they're going to be going before city councils and planning commissions and saying, why didn't you guys build us more bicycle infrastructure when you had the opportunity? And us bicyclists will be able to say, see, you should have listened to us.
I did hear a news story recently that in Greece, fortunately and very unfortunately, bicycling is one of the more booming businesses, aside from Greek yogurt.
Yes, yeah, making a comeback out of necessity.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. And it's also interesting, if you look at a nation like China, for example, or India, that has such a long history with the bike, culturally ingrained, and the practical transportation choice, China particularly, urban China, has such now auto challenges. Like they have fast forwarded into the auto era's angst of congestion, and they simply can't build fast enough to accommodate their new car buyers. Yeah. And it'd be really interesting to see how those cultures start to look back to the bike. I'm wondering if you have any feeling about the electric bike. It's kind of like it's. I see it come up more and more, and obviously there's some opportunities, profit-making opportunity for electric bike manufacturers, and it's a lot. So there are reasons why people will get behind an electric bike. Any feeling about whether the electric bike is going to revolutionize personal transportation?
Well, I have mixed feelings about it. We're talking earlier about kind of our default rides. Well, our default ride is we're 4 blocks away from Biona Creek, the Biona Creek bike path. So we leave our house, ride 4 blocks through our neighborhood, Biona Creek to Playa del Rey, and we get on the Marvin Brody bike trail south to Redondo. Okay, that's our default ride. It's 30 something miles. It's our training ride. It's just our fun ride.
We've done it thousands of times.
Literally
yes.
thousands of times. And what we notice is in the last year or so that the number of electric bikes on that has gone from 0 to quite a few. And I'm really a little bit scared of those, because they are 2 or 3 times faster than we might bicycle there. It's a narrow path, and an electric bicycle is heavier than a regular bicycle, and it's going faster. And so I'm concerned about bike-on-bike accidents.
Sometimes they feel a little aggressive.
Yeah, because they're not pedaling; they're going under motor power, and they zip right by you without an on your left or any kind of bell or anything like that, and it's just it's more than a little bit disconcerting. And so I'm glad to see people out in a form of transportation that's not an automobile, but at the same time, as a traditional bicyclist, I'm a little bit concerned. And these electric bicycles, you don't have to do anything other than ride it like a normal bike. There's no license, there's no licensing requirements for the vehicle, anything like that. And so I'm a little bit concerned that it's creating additional hazards for us traditional bicyclists.
On the other hand, I do think there's a beauty to being able to bike up the hills that you might not feel comfortable with, and you could switch to the traditional mode and do these routes that, commutes or whatever routes that you might not be able to do otherwise. Mm-hmm. So I think there is that advantage.
Mm. Yeah, I guess I can see that advantage. One of the prefaces in your book is, I forget what you called it. It was a reference to the cooperative culture in bicycle culture in Los Angeles. It was a play on the bicycle kitchen. Communal cookery, right? Communal cookery. So you have this couple of pages that talks about our kind of particular bike culture here, which came out of, say, the bicycle kitchen, and this idea that we have this ecology of cycling here, which is as yet an underground ecology, but yet it's a healthy ecology. It recycles bicycles, it disassembles and reassembles them and everything. And I guess I myself wonder, when you put an electric bike in the mix, first of all, there's a new category of waste, because now you have a battery that has to get disposed of. But I also wonder if it's like a monkey wrench, if you will, into this kind of fluid bicycle recycling culture we have here. Any feeling about that? Or maybe even Chicken Leather has a feeling about that.
Well, I'd like to, you mentioned this cooperative bicycling community. I would really like to see us take that idea of cooperative bicycle mechanicking environment, which is teaching people how to be self-sufficient on their bicycle. I'd like to see that extended to let's teach each other how to bicycle safely, bicycle smartly, and bicycle in a way that is conducive to change among automobilists, among drivers. If we behave really well, it might show automobile drivers that we're not a bunch of crazy idiots out there just breaking the laws and doing dumb stuff, that we really care about our own safety, we care about pedestrian safety, we care about driver safety as well. In that I really hate to see that come about by some law from Sacramento. I'd rather see it be something that's organic, that comes about through the bicycling community, and we do it ourselves, because that gives us the power to direct it however we want, and it brings all voices into that conversation. That's what I'd like to see, is take that kernel, that idea that was created by the bike kitchen, the bike oven, Bike Row Wave, the Valley Bikery, all of these people that are at the forefront of cooperativeness and put that into, let's all teach each other bicycle safety and good conduct. I think that's kind of, but as far as these electric bikes and these gasoline powered bikes, I don't know. It's a tough one for me to like. I'm scared of them in a way.
Well, Sarah was kind of making the point, or I think she was suggesting that they might be a point of entry for people who might not otherwise have cycled. Get them on two wheels. Perhaps they'll start thinking about other forms of two-wheel transit. I mean, cycling today, and especially bike hardware, is such a kind of a status item. Expensive bikes have always been kind of a status item, but among relatively few people. Now we have, at least here in LA, we have this kind of burgeoning consciousness, and it kind of is attached at the hip with the fixie culture, where there's a certain status in just being a cyclist on the streets. So maybe, in the best case, maybe electric bicycles will start to get people over to the two-wheel side, and then maybe they'll start thinking a little bit more about the kind of the rich nuance of bike culture otherwise.
We're not sure.
Well, wait a minute. Okay, so what you're saying is didn't you say you started out with a Stingray? Mm-hmm. Do you still have your Stingray? Probably not.
No.
But I'm sure you've got more than one bike, and I'm sure it's not a fixed gear. So you went from Stingray to like a...
No. I've got a single speed.
Oh, okay.
I've got a single speed.
All right, so you went from...
It's not a fixie, but it's a single speed.
You went from Stingray to geared bike to fixie, or geared bike to something else, or Stingray to... Was it Stingray had gears?
I think I'm like an octopus. I developed all these tentacles at once. I mean, the single speed and my geared bikes, they all just kind of happened around the same time.
And John's also been involved with building bikes.
Oh, well, see, I think that gets back maybe to your component about people that know how to fix your bike, because after a while, the first thing I really try to do from Ciclavia in these sort of breakthrough kind of moments is to actually tell somebody, maybe you should really learn just the basics first off, and then we'll go to the harder things, because you always get people that come in and they want to convert their bike from a geared bike into a fixed gear bike at some of these collectives, and it gets back to the fact that it's like, well, you can do it. We can do it for you, but it's a labor-intensive kind of thing, and I think we should learn the labor, because you're going to be doing this a lot. Everybody thinks that once you turned it into a fixed-gear bike, you'll never have to have any maintenance on it, where in one respect it does take more maintenance. It takes more listening to those familiar, like, what's that crack? What's that sound? What is that? Is that something I should take care of now? Is that just a warning sign, or is that just something I forget about? Is that something I can just sort of put off for 3 weeks as part of normal maintenance, or is that something I should really look into right away? I mean, the question is, how did you make that transition from like being a kid? And I'm not saying that you're not a kid still, but having that intuitiveness to say, I've got my Stingray now. What do I start riding now? I love going to events on a Stingray or a girl's bike, and they look at me like, what the hell is this about?
Well,
or a 20-inch wheelbase,
I think on one level, to me, a bike's a bike.
Exactly.
I mean, I'd never. It's more like. I was kind of raised in a family that was mechanical. My dad was very mechanical. My brother was very mechanical. We fixed stuff. Okay, so my analogy is a toolbox.
I would say fixed and built stuff.
Fixed and built stuff. In my analogy would be a toolbox. Is I have a hammer and a screwdriver and a pair of pliers. Okay, well, I'm not going to pick up the hammer to change a light bulb. Okay, same with my bicycles. I have a mountain bike. Okay, I have my single speed. We have a very, very inexpensive bike that we ride over to the corner store to get milk or a vegetable or something like that.
I thought you were going to say we also have a very inexpensive baby bike in our home.
We have
like a beater bike.
Yeah, well, it's not a beater bike because it's a bike. And then I have my road bikes. I have my commuter bike, and so I kind of have. You might think like, what the hell's he got all these bikes for when one would do?
Right.
But it's also I'd never ride a single speed. in a traffic environment because I want a lot more control over the braking, things like that.
By law, you have to have a brake in California. On a fixie, for example, you have to have a handbrake.
Right, and tell me how many of those fixies that are out there on these streets in Los Angeles actually have a brake? Right. I think there's somewhat of a disconnect between what people do in the law. So like I said, I choose to be safe and pick up the bike that's got the biggest brakes when I'm around traffic.
And for me, the fixie culture actually, or a fixie bike, not the culture of the bike, doesn't hold much allure because I love the gears. I'm all about maximizing the effort, which you can do through the gears, and the fixie is a whole other thing.
But let's face it, what the fixie revolution has done is it has opened this city to thousands of people, thousands of kids who would have been trapped in their neighborhoods. And it's opened this community to them in this county, this city. And I think that is a remarkable revolution. And if whether we like the fixies, we don't like the fixie crowd, whatever our position is, that's not the point. The point is that it's getting people out, getting them to their friends, and
commuting
or commuting or whatever they're doing that's not car.
Yeah.
And also, I do love the enthusiasm, and the aesthetic of it. People have so much fun with that, and it's pretty fabulous.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I just want to be clear. I embrace the fixie culture. I just don't personally embrace a fixie.
Right.
Yeah.
But
I love that the fixie culture, especially among the youth, and especially among the youth in some of our kind of economically disadvantaged neighborhoods, like John's saying. I love that the fixie culture kind of starts to push the envelope outward in a way that, just frankly, the spandex riders, and I count myself as one as well, but the spandex riders don't in Los Angeles. For whatever reason, just my work in Beverly Hills, I've realized, and I've not figured it out, that when it comes to advocacy and pushing that envelope outward, the spandex crowd largely is MIA. Any thoughts on that? Or am I wrong about that?
Well, that's an interesting question that I think transcends all these bicycling communities. It's whether it be the single-speed fixie riders, the commuters, the spandex roadies, the mountain bikers. It's why aren't they uniformly more involved in advancing our cause? And it's, who knows, I don't have, I mean, I'm a roadie, I'm a spandex guy, but I also ride, I also commute, I also do all these other things. And so I just honestly don't, maybe I've just not talked to enough people to know why that is, but it is. And I think that maybe it's not so important as to who belongs to our advocacy groups, is that we can ultimately have a voice, is that all of those people in one way or another, whether it be through the Wolfpack Hustle or through a bike cooperative or through the coalition or through getting out and riding the rides in our book, whatever. Mm-hmm. If we get out there and we just announce our presence, we just say we are here, that maybe that's enough maybe that's the way to get things done, is just get people out there.
Mm-hmm. We're here talking with John Riddle and Sarah Amelar, authors of Where to Bike Los Angeles. I'm here with Nick, with Chicken Leather, just musing about bikes and bike culture in the second hour of Bike Talk. John, you mentioned Wolfpack Hustle. Don Ward brought a bunch of folks out to Beverly Hills this past Thursday for one of our city council meetings. Don has been active in the past, trying to call attention to hit and runs, but also specifically how the cops investigate and treat bike collisions. And Beverly Hills probably doesn't have an illustrious history of in-depth investigation of bike collisions, even some heinous ones. So Don Ward to kind of put out a heads up, and he turned out about 20 cyclists to Beverly Hills City Council chambers. This happened to be the same day that the council earlier in the day was reviewing possible bike routes, where to put sharrows down and the like. That's a whole nother story. But Don and these folks came out from Panorama City. There was a guy from Bell Gardens. There was a couple of women from downtown LA and somewhere else. And there was a Beverly Hills mom and her 2 daughters saying, geez, we'd love to ride into the center of town for ice cream, but, we're too scared. And when you hear that from an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old, it really makes an impression. So that just kind of reminds me, John, of what you said, that it really takes all these different elements of the bike culture to kind of push that envelope, that advocacy envelope outward, and to show the policymakers that, we need the safety facilities. And it's obviously not going to be the spandex guys. I mean, I'm just grousing about that today, but it may be the fixie guys, and women, and it may be the cooperative folks, and it's going to be the utility cyclists, and which of course brings me to vehicular cyclists. What do you feel about that? There's a kind of in the bike culture, there's a kind of a low boil about whether vehicular cyclists today are constructive or maybe are in some way kind of getting in the way of the message. I'll use an example like John Forrester, a vehicular cyclist that really put vehicular cycling on the map. Bike cyclists should ride with the cars. And there's a kind of an adherent or vehement vehicular cycling culture out there that says, we don't need a bike lane because cyclists should ride with the cars. We are traffic, and to give us a separate or segregated facilities kind of maintains this dual tier. We experience that as a second class status. Cyclists today feel second class, and those vehicular cyclists say, that just kind of reinforces this dual class or multi-class road user system. What do you think about that? Again, putting you on the spot a little bit.
Well, that's okay. I can tell you from firsthand experience riding in Europe that the infrastructure in Europe the bicycle infrastructure in Europe is clearly much better and much more developed and much more advanced than it is here in the U.S. And you see more bicyclists. So, my day job is to look at relationships like that, and so I see better bicycle infrastructure, more of it, more bicyclists. There's probably a correlation there. So, and we also know from anecdotal evidence, just talking to people about how they feel about bicycling, that more better bicycle-specific infrastructure increases the number of bicyclists. So if that's our goal, to get more people out of their cars, more people doing their 1 and 2 mile errand type and commute type bicycle or errands on bicycle as opposed to car, then I think the answer is building bicycle-specific infrastructure. That's the lesson I learned.
Until that day comes, I've heard you got this book, Where to Bike, but I've also heard where you don't bike too. You were talking about the Compton Creek and everything. Believe it or not, I actually rode that thing at night, the day it was open, and it was beautiful. Even
it could be.
We went back like 5 months later, it rained, and it was probably one of the worst days. It was the Tour de Watts, and it was because, like you say, there was a lot of trash. There was a lot of things that could be cleaned up.
Right.
And yet they were addressing things like, instead of looking at it like, why are people dumping stuff here? Why aren't people using this as a bike route? It's like, well, why aren't you providing a place where people can dump and people can have back their bike route? And in fact, some of the times you see that. I'm wondering, are there places you won't bike because there's no infrastructure, because there's no place to, like a repair station, or there's no line out there? Do you really feel that's inherent in biking? Because I know a lot of people did say, pack your own repair kit, be ready to face it. But I'm not asking as a confrontation, but as an enlightenment thing. What do you think needs to be improved?
I think that there are big areas on the map where we actually don't have rides. where there is not enough bike infrastructure. And I personally love biking with as few cars as possible. That's just my preference. John is a bit braver than I am, and I do all these rides, but the less interaction with cars, the happier I am. And I don't worry about being segregated. I don't think that is a negative segregation. I think that's protective. And by the way, we do advocate wearing helmets. We do like people to be as safe as they can.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah. But I don't know, John, maybe you want to say something.
I think on an abstract level, there's that as far as I'm concerned, there's no part of LA County that's off limits that I'll ride. I'm just likely to look at the maps I have, that what I know about getting from point A to B pretty carefully, so that I choose the absolute safest route. I'm not just going to say, well, let's see, I want to go to Boyle Heights today. I'll just draw a line from my house to Boyle Heights, and there's where I'm going.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to do that. I'm going to think, well, is this better than this? And I'll take obviously take the more bike friendly of the routes I can find. So I'm not so cavalier as to say, well, I'm just going to go where the hell ever I want to go.
And having said that, I want to suggest my way on your, what was it?
To Studio City.
Studio City to
Culver City.
To Culver City. Okay, Culver City. I would go literally up and until I could get on the red line and go over the hill with the red line, be rested for, I don't know, what is that, maybe 2-3 miles, and then get off, in downtown, whatever, and I could either get on the ancillary kind of bike way with the orange line and be in Studio City. I mean, if we're talking Valley Circle, I think I'd take maybe a safer route. Having said this, I have done that route the fastest I can, and I was amazed. Maybe 35 minutes, but it wasn't a straight line.
Wait, from Studio City to Culver City in 35 minutes?
Yeah, I did it one time.
I would like to ride with you, man. You cook.
Well, no,
but he has the bike oven. Of course he cooks.
No, but this was like, I got to get there for some reason, and in fact, it was a silly reason now, but it was like, you have to
see if you could get there in 35 minutes.
No, it wasn't like that. It was actually trying to get an insurance policy to the other thing for some shoot. And I remember once I had taken it on a scooter, and I got there, but I got stopped. So the money I made, the time I made up was now money lost in time, because now instead of having the permit there, I had to actually sit there and talk to a police officer, and tell him, why were you doing that? Well, I was trying to get from here to there for this or something. Mm-hmm. But this is also I guess, has Premium Rush opened or something about Bike Messenger, and there's all this.
Wow, Thursday night.
And they're talking about the movie being like so convoluted with everything, but it's great action sequences. I think they're missing the point that when I did hear, what is his name, Gordon Levitt or whatever his name, talk about this, he talked about how there is a bike culture and stuff. He tried to change it back into bike culture, and the interviewer was always trying to get it back, like, hey, you crashed. Why did you crash? And it came out that it was ancillary to the movie. It was just a fluke. And I think that's what we have to address sometimes. We don't address enough the idea of, these are always safe, these are safe routes and everything, but there's always that fluke. And maybe that's what why do you wear a helmet? Because you're going to get into an accident? And it's like, no, you never know. Yeah. You wear it for a safety
insurance.
factor. Exactly.
Yes. I mean, I met a woman at one point who was riding, and she wasn't wearing a helmet because she said that she was on a route that didn't have cars. But that's not a reason. You could actually hit your head. You could be in a bike collision. But the other thing is that what made me very sad a few years ago, when there was a fatal accident on a bike path in New York City, and the person who was killed actually was very active in the white bike movement. And I looked at who had been...
Ghost bikes, yeah.
Ghost bikes, exactly. Yeah. And I looked at, the history of that, and I saw that many of them had actually happened on bike-only paths. Yeah. But a lot of them happened at the intersection where cars had to cross them and people weren't prepared. So just because you're bike-only doesn't mean that you shouldn't wear a helmet.
Yeah, or switch off that thing. And I bring this to mind because Don would argue that if we make it safe enough for everyone, then you really might not need that helmet or something.
Maybe not as badly, but you could still have a concussion.
Exactly.
You could still fall from a bike, and there certainly can be bike collisions.
Exactly. So, having said this, the last question is: you've been wearing this "Better Living Through Architecture" T-shirt today, and I know a group of people called Materials and Application, where they take materials and they apply them to architecture and stuff. I think the same thing might be used with bicycles. We've only seen the first generation of carbon fiber, and now kids are getting into it, and they're realizing that, but they're sort of leaving all these things behind. And my question to you, do you see, in my neighborhood, Northeast Los Angeles, I see a lot more people doing stranger things with bikes than you would ever believe, because in its essence, it's like you said before, it's a bike. It's two wheels. But they're using it to get from point A to B.
Uh-huh.
They're using it not just that way, but they're using it for things like not recreation, but their work, for transportation and stuff. I'm wondering, do you think that might be an area if we started seeing like rocket science, old frames that are really light being used for commuters or something, or
Sure.
something like that?
Sure, why not?
But I would also say that in architecture and other fields, sometimes restrictions and constraints actually give way to creativity. You have to come up with even greater solutions.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, where people have the most limited resources is where they are most inventive and come up with the coolest ideas.
Well,
So I think that happens in a lot of inner
Yeah.
cities, in LA and elsewhere.
And I think that's bike culture at its finest. Here in
Absolutely.
LA and elsewhere.
But-
Okay.
So I was going to point out that this idea of taking something off the assembly line and making it your own, it's not new.
No.
I mean, the moment Henry Ford started making the Model T, men and women were taking those cars and making them their own, whether you put, this part, that part, repainting them, whatever. It almost instantly became a statement of personality. And then 30 years later, 40 years later, when these Model Ts were sitting in some guy's junk heap in the backyard, another generation of teenagers came along and stripped them down and turned them into what we call hot rods now. And so I think that that each one of us has our bicycle that fits our personality, that's kind of we've played with it and fixed it and done things to it that makes it our own statement. In a way, we might not admit it. And so I think, it would not surprise me that 10 years from now, we see kids making fixies out of what once was a $5,000 Eddie Merckx or a $7,000 Pinarello road frame,
Or total trash.
or
Sadly,
total
they're
trash.
doing that today.
Yeah, so it's I think there's great prospects for these bikes continuing to be on the road for a long time.
Well, having said that, and I think we're going to wrap up the hour if we haven't already. The last thing I wanted to suggest to people is the idea of intermodal. We talked about how the goal line, well, not the goal line, but the Arroyo Seco and the raised bike path might have been a way to get from Los Angeles to Pasadena. In that vein, today, having started an hour ago, they're having entertainment along the goal line today. I think it's actually $20, but I personally never pay that much money. And I have seen, similarly, I don't think a lot of it is seen out here, but I have seen it on occasion where you get performers on vans and they put out the hat. We don't see a lot of it here because I think the police look at it as panhandling. But I see it, a lot of it in New York. That is happening today. I think it's $20 to ride the line back and forth and see all these performers on the lines.
Or whatever you can afford to pay.
Exactly. And I think in some sense, some of these things deserve more that you afford to pay, and some deserve less than you deserve to pay. But having said that, look forward to you using more intermodal kind of transportation.
It's one of the things we wanted to do with the book is build our rides around public transportation. On one plane, it doesn't make any sense to us to go out on a bike ride, but the first thing you have to do is drive across town to start a ride.
Exactly.
I mean, that seems kind of like, well, why didn't you just either ride there in the first place or take some other form of transportation that's less impactful.
Well, thank you so much, John Riddle and Sarah Amelar, authors of Where to Bike Los Angeles, for coming in today. Bike Talk Studios, Kill Radio, and KPFK. It's been a great talk. We're here with Chicken Leather, Nicholas Richard. I'm Mark Elliott, and wrapping up. And thanks so much. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was so fun.
Bye.